Hello, and glad Yule to everybody watching tonight on this fifth night of Yule. Hope everybody is having a fantastic holiday season with friends and family. Tonight, because on the fifth night of Yule, because of how things work or whatever, people have day off tomorrow. A lot of families are doing family stuff as they've got an evening for it with no day of work tomorrow and they've got festivities they're doing. So I figured I would let folks have a break and not push them to be on here. And the folks that want to join me, I will do an old school. For those of you who may not have been watching this since the beginning, it kind of all came about because I was doing a monthly Facebook live stream, and I was enjoying asking everybody, answering everybody's questions and talking to folks. So I figured I would do that more often and bring on some other folks to talk to you. And that's why this program got started. So going back to our roots tonight, and just going to be me here. Swan said he may pop on later or whatever. And if he does, he's certainly welcome to. Um, but yeah, it's good to be with you guys this evening. Like I said, hope everybody's doing great. All of our Hoffs had their Yule celebration last Saturday, and that was awesome. It was fantastic to see so many of our folk for the first time gathered together in five Hoffs, all celebrating Yule on that day. So it was special. Looked like everybody had a good time where they were at. Our celebration at Odenshoff was fantastic. I mean, it always is. There's no real way that it wasn't gonna be, but it was a really good time. Always is. We always do something big for having Father Yule come out and give gifts to all the children in attendance, which is always awesome. There's so many kids, and kids enjoying themselves and eating sweets and getting presents is always an awesome time. Bloat was really good. I was very impressed with everybody's fortitude. It was so Odenshoff is in Brownsville, California, and that's in the foothills of the Sierras. And it was very warm this Yule, and man, it was pouring down rain. Um, but the way we do things there at some of our other Hoffs, we do our bloats or some of them inside. Odenshoff's not really set up for that, but we have a really elaborate ritual circle outside. We do most of our bloats, and where we do all of our bloats there. And so we had stuff planned. It's got torches. We always, we burn the Yule Bach, and then we light a sun wheel over. Especially, it worked out very well because it wasn't just around the right night. It was the night of the longest night of the year on Hawknot. So we went out there and everybody was game, and we did bloat in the pouring rain, and everybody got soaked, but not one person complained, at least to me, about it. So I appreciate that. I thought it was really good bloat, and it was certainly a good time. If you haven't made it to one of your Hoffs yet and you're anywhere close, or even if you're not, make it to one of your Hoffs. Go on a road trip or a bloat fair, a bloat journey to go check out one of the Hoffs and celebrate with your folk. And Yule's always a particularly special time to have done that. As always, GW Farnsworth starts our program off with his tremendous generosity. Appreciate that. $30 towards paying off Phrasehoff, and then $20 towards this program. Thank you very much. And I hope to meet you one of these days. And I'm very, very appreciative of your generosity over every week on this show. Another guy who is a paragon of generosity, Gilbert donated $150 to help to beautify Thorshoff. Folks at Thorshoff are working on scraping and painting. Thorshoff is a I got a math, but about 150-year-old building. So I don't know if it has been painted aside from its initial paint job. It's really beautiful building, but when you get up close, the paint is in very poor repair. So raising money there to scrape it and paint it and get it a new coat of paint, and to be looking as shining as it ought to. So we're looking forward to seeing that happen, and we appreciate everybody who's donating to the cause. Appreciate everybody joining us in the chat today, as always, but today in particular, it's going to be heavily question and answer driven. So if you got stuff you want to talk about or questions you want to ask, please feel free to do so. Beyond that, I guess, please feel encouraged to do so. So, top of the show things, as is my custom, I'm giving you an update on Phrasehoff payoff and where we're at on that. We are now at 33.1% paid off, which is awesome. You guys have been amazing. That's still owe 83,644. If you guys would like to donate, runestone.org/donate. It's got the link there. But that really is tremendous progress, seeing as how it's not even been dedicated a month yet. You guys are fantastic. That comes out to, if every member of the AFA were to donate $112 right now, it would pay that off today. So thank you guys for that. We've got a bunch of questions tonight. I'm going to answer questions, and I'm going to kind of, I don't know, I may expand on some of those things if, I don't know, if the mood strikes me or if the question strikes me. But we'll just kind of get into the flow of stuff here. So, got a question from Caleb. Can something as simple as maintaining a bird feeder be considered an offering to the land spirits? Yes, I absolutely think that is something, and I think there's a couple of things at play in that. I think you can ritualize a lot of things. I think a lot of things that might seem simple or mundane don't have to be. And as we've said so many times on the program, so much of it is about the intention, the thought behind what you're doing. And so much of what adds potency to it is the tradition or the consistent doing it over the course of time. So, there's a lot of things to be said for people who own property as far as ways to interact with the spirits of that place. And if one of the things you do is to maintain your bird feeder, with that in mind, and, perhaps say a few words when you fill it up, I think that's absolutely a really good idea. I think the Landvitier interact with us a lot through the various critters that occupy the world around us. So I think a bird feeder is a really good idea for something like that. And it absolutely is an acceptable and good way to make offerings to the Landvitier. So the next question, these questions, there's not really a theme to them. We got questions from all over the place this evening. But what is the AFA's stance on prenuptial agreements? In a secular sense, it makes sense to prepare for statistic likelihood of divorce, but the very idea of an agreement seems like it undermines the marriage because it isn't total commitment. So, first, the AFA as a body, we do not have a stance on prenuptial agreements, but there are some thoughts that I would like to give on it. So, and I think this extends not just to the marriage oath, but I think it extends to a lot of oaths in general. It's wise to be cautious, and it's wise on certain oaths to take your time and to keep them simple and to keep the verbiage simple. But the guy who asked the question makes a good point when he talks about it undermining, it's not a total commitment, it's not all in. And I've found when people, well, actually, I've had a conversation with someone very recently about this in terms of our folk builder oath. So the folk builder oath, and in a similar vein, the ordination oath in the AFA is very one-sided, and it's one-sided intentionally. It is the person becoming a folk builder or the person seeking to be ordained as a Gothi pledging their loyalty, their obedience, and their service to the Asatru Folk Assembly, to the ICER, and to me specifically, as well as the other ranking leaders in the AFA. And people are like, well, but what if, what are you guys obliged to do? If this guy's oathing to do all this folk building work, what are your reciprocal responsibilities? What about this? What about that? And I think those are all really good questions to think about. But I think the nature of the oath is one of oathing into something that exists and wanting to join a group that's existent. It's not us forming a partnership. It's that person getting a higher level of leadership within an existent framework that has to have a hierarchical structure. So I think it works really well. One of the things that, and this is related to the question, I promise, but one of the things that comes up, because just like other oaths, I specify some implied things. So here we are, taking this folk builder oath to, bring our folk home, to build the AFA, to, promote the religion of Asatru, to do all of the noble things that we're all here for. And it's implied in that oath that myself and the rest of the AFA leadership are also on that task, that we're united in that mission. And we're united before the watchful eyes of the gods that we invoke to witness the oath. So, yeah, it's incumbent upon us to be good leaders. It's incumbent upon us to do the right things to maintain our troth to the ICER and to lead responsibly. But if the verbiage of the oath is set with caveats, like, well, I'll be a folk builder unless you do this, or unless you guys say something I don't agree with, or unless I don't feel like it one day, or unless, the more you do that, every word of, but wait, cheapens it and lessens it and makes it less open-hearted. And so in a similar way, I compared it and I said, when I got married, if Mandy were saying her vows, and her vows were to, to be my wife and to love me and be with me forever, unless I cheated on her, or unless I abused her, or unless I, did this, or unless I did that, I wouldn't have gone through with it, because it cheapens it. I think all of those things are understood. I think all of those things are, baked into the understanding of the marriage agreement. And I think that common sense implies those things. But when you specify, the less you make it about a devotional oath of bonding between two people, and the more you make it contractual and about money and with pre-existing caveats and clauses and things like that, you're right, it does cheapen it in a lot of ways. Now, I say that if you have, if you have people with responsibilities and economic entanglements that are vastly different, and you have one of these guys that's, a CEO of some company and has built a fortune for his existent family and whatever, and he finds himself single and, you know, a lot of women vying for his attention and wanting to be in a relationship with him. I'm not saying that the AFA would advise him to have a prenuptial agreement, but it does, in some circumstances where there is an overriding economic benefit to that not working out, it does make some logical sense to, hey, would you still marry me, knowing that if you divorce me, you're not going to get all of the fortune that I've made. I can see that in some very rare circumstances, but I think so. Does it undermine the marriage and start it on a bad foot? Yes, I think it does, to a degree. I don't think it ruins and fouls the entire thing, but I do think it makes it less open-hearted than it would be otherwise. So there's a lot of room to make the decisions that are right for you, but it is something very much to think about. AFA doesn't have something to where it's forbidden to do that, but every time you have a, well, unless, or with an asterisk by it on the oaths that you make, the more it does cheapen the power and the emotional gesture of the oath. So that's something important to keep in mind. I think that's a really good question, though, and this is the first time anyone has asked that I'm aware of. So
speaking of one thing, this month, one of our heroes, King or well, Olaf Tryggvason tried to set up some prenups with Queen Sigurdur, and she didn't like those.
No, and so that's the thing. If you are royalty and there are, the fate of nations at stake, and again, there's things where it makes sense to get more contractual, and honestly, some marriages in those kind of head of state circumstances lend themselves to be heavily contractual and less about genuine affection for one another. And that'd be one of those circumstances where having that ironed out a bit makes a little bit of sense, or certainly can. So one of the other things that you guys may not recall from the good old days when I was just doing this by myself does lead to some awkward pauses, because I also have to read the stuff, look at the chat room, read the questions, and kind of sort through it. So if there's pauses and stuff, please cut me a little bit of slack on that, if you will. I like to keep up on just kind of the theme of what's going on in the chat, so I know. But yeah, so the next thing, kind of general, but something I'm real happy to tell you guys about. Tell us about the Phrasehoff mural. It would be really cool if our producer could show you a picture of the beautiful Phrasehoff mural. And having said that, I'm sure that he will here shortly when he can.
Give me a minute.
I didn't expect it to be at your fingertips, but it does help for our audience who is watching this. Doesn't really do much for the later podcast audience, but you guys can always check out the video if you want to see it. Or better yet, you can go to Phrasehoff in lovely Austintown, Ohio, and check it out. So my about 50% of the time co-host on here, Witten Svan Harold, is the artist that paints the beautiful murals of our gods at each of our hofs. And it's funny because if you look at Thor's mural in Thor's Hof, it's absolutely amazing, and it looks like he's been painting murals his whole life. He will self-deprecatingly, I'm not a painter. I would say that he is now. you look at that Thor mural and it's spectacular. But I tell you, he gets better. There it is. He gets better at his technique and at his composition and at his work in general every single mural he does. So if you see it over there, you may not get a sense of just how big the mural is, but it's huge. I think Cliff was suggesting, it's hard for me to make sense of that figure. So I'm just going to say, let's say it's about 9 foot tall by, I don't know, 9 by 4 foot or something. No, it's got to be bigger than that. Anyways, it is very large. It does not look that large there, but it is absolutely dominating an extremely big room. And when you see it, there's not words. And I've struggled with this a couple of times. As I've said before, I get kind of a special privilege. Svan consults me about it during the process and, shows me pictures as it goes up. But I'm never quite prepared for the totality of it when I'm there. So I think over the course of 3 days, Svan did this. He does such an amazing job, and it's something truly magical happens with the murals. And I don't know the best way to state it that gets the gravity behind it, but he's not just a guy painting a picture. He is a priest trying to honor his gods with his depiction of them in a way that they can inhabit that mural and project themselves through it to our folk. And it can serve as a portal in a way for them to, like I said, project themselves onto the folk, but also for the folk to give and make offerings in front of that mural and direct the worship towards that mural. It transmits energy and worship to the gods in a really particular and really special way. And you really feel it when one of those murals is done and Svan has worked his magic on the mural. When you're there, there is a presence. There is a part of our gods that occupy and that see through those murals onto the folk in a really special way. So there's Cliff, and Cliff's a tall guy, and there's him next to the hole. With Cliff in there, let's say it's a 12 foot by, say it's 12 by 7. Anyway, it's a very big spot. This particular one, Svan added tons of detail work, and you're going to have to look at it to see. But most prominently, you see Lord Freyr and his golden boar, Gullinbursti. It just looks kind of a little bit shiny yellow in the picture, and that if it looked just like this picture in real life, it would still be amazing. But Svan found metallic gold-colored leafing in order to intersperse and utilize for the golden bristles of Gullinbursti, for the solar halo around Freyr's head, and for different, metallic bits in a way that it has such a powerful effect depending on how the room is lit. When there's, candles and firelight and light coming from different sources, it shines, and it is so impressive. It is literally awesome in the sense that it is awe-inspiring, and it takes a moment to drink it all in and really process it. I was brought to tears the first time I saw it. Svan did a absolutely amazing job. There's so much awesome about it that you just can't tell from the picture. So many elements of it really pop in just the perfect way. The sunset behind him in the mountains is really striking, and it seems like a minor detail from here, but in person it's really profound, and it's one of the things that stands out about it. But there's so much, again, I can't say enough good about it, but there, I told you about it. Look back over and see what we got going on in our chat.
Whole bunch of donations coming in. You better be ready.
Awesome. I'll go check those. There's a bunch of stuff. Nick, bring stuff to my attention if cool stuff happens in the chat. I am glad that we have an awesome and vibrant chat. If I miss anything, don't hold it against me. You guys are doing good over there, chat, and we got some good AFA folks in there that can get you answers you need. And I'm sure a bunch of it will make my way on here. Wow. You guys are awesome. So thank you for pointing that out, Nick. And thank you, Kevin, who donated $200 to Phrasehoff. Yeah, thank you so much for that, Kevin. We appreciate that very, very much. Jarrett donated $120 to Phrasehoff and $20 towards beautifying Thorshoff. Thank you, Jarrett. Much appreciated. Yeah, you guys are amazing. Steve bought us a coffee and says Happy Yule. Well, Happy Yule to you as well, Steve. If you want to do the coffee thing, the links for that are in the description. Thank you. We appreciate it. Ron bought us 3 coffees. And it is monetized, so I think I got something I'm supposed to address in that. If you could go back in time to the Arch Asatru days, what is the one rite you would like to participate in and videotape? Bloat, Sumbel, or Alsavatni? For anybody who doesn't know, Alsavatni means literally the sprinkling of water. It's our naming ceremony that we do for AFA babies, welcoming them, affixing their name to them, but introducing them and welcoming them into our AFA family in front of the folk and in front of the gods. So Ron, you this is a monetized question, so I can't do the cop out. I want to see all of them because, of course, I do. So if I could only do one and videotape it and participate in the the Viking era Asatru days or prior, I think, you know what, it's festive, it's time of year, it's on my mind, and I think it's likely one of the biggest ones of the year. I'd like to participate in a Yule bloat. I think that would be amazing. I think it is a particularly spiritual time of the year to do that. And I would love to see, feel, smell, sense, participate in that kind of a ritual with our ancestors in their way at that time. I think that would be very powerful, and I'd love to be there and be part of that. And Gabriel donated $100 to Phrasehoff. Thank you so much. We appreciate that tremendously. Got questions lined up, so I got to find my way back here. All right, next one is, who designed the Hoff flags? There's a number of ways to tackle that. Our Hoff flags, as they are now, certainly our first five, are similar in general composition. There is a solid field, um, a heraldic animal on it that's the Kinfilia of the Hoff, and there's a scroll at the bottom with a motto on it, and then there is the number of the Hoff in the corner. Now, a lot of that is we just go with kind of a tradition on it. They don't have to be that way, and I make no guarantee that, you know, additional ones will always look that way or need to. But I think I'm the guy that kind of came up with that. I know it was really important. I wanted to have that number in the corner to indicate the Hoffs. We're going to get to a point one day where people think the number in the corner is kind of silly. But early on, when we're in a day where we have now 5 Hoffs, but specifically when we were doing them, I'm trying to think of when that first flag happened. I believe it may have happened when we just had Odin's Hoff. So it was anticipating these numbers to come. I know in my head it was just kind of a, man, when it's not just eyes and there's a V, that'll be really cool. Now we've got, 2 of them so far that incorporate a V in the numbering, and it'll be really awesome when we get to where there's an X in them. So that, I think, was kind of my idea on that. As far as the content goes, like the colors, what the animal's going to be, what that image looks like, what the motto's going to be. Odin's Hoff flag. The horse, so we ended up having cross. Brandy says they happened in 2020, and I don't know if they happened in 2020 before we got our 2 Hoffs that we got that year, or if they happened afterwards. But yeah, so the horses and the red and white color scheme was kind of established before my time. Well, I say before my time as Allsherjargoði, certainly. The idea of doing crossed horse heads on the gabling was a Anglo-Saxon inspired thing by our chief of staff at the time, Gothi Brad Taylor Hicks. He had wanted to do that. He was a big part of kind of the theme and the decorating of the Hoff when we first got what would become Odin's Hoff. And so having the crossed horse heads on the gables was an Anglo-Saxon inspired thing. The building itself was red with white trim, and we just ran with that. And that ended up becoming the colors for that Hoff. And because of horses, and because once we rededicated it as Odin's Hoff to honor the Allfather with a horse specific to him, we made the white horse of the logo be Sleipnir. And that was, it seemed self-evident. I know I worked with Madison on the design. The motto, I don't know when the motto was formalized or who. It's another one that was self-evident because it was a rallying cry that our founder, Steve McNallen, used a lot of the time. He was very fond of reminding us, to do right and fear no one. That was something that he admonished us frequently, and that was a guiding principle of his, and we wanted to incorporate that on that first Hoff of ours. Thor's Hoff flag. So another idea, and you notice we have these very colorful flags. One of the things about the Hoffs symbolically is that we are rebuilding and reforging our link to the gods. We're reestablishing that, and we're rebuilding it. And literally, the embodiment of the idea of the bridge between Midgard and Asgard there is Bifrost. And so the rainbow of colors with the brightly colored heraldry of the Hoffs was intentional that way. I think Spawn was trying to go with, okay, well, if Matt's doing red for Odin's Hoff, we'll go with the next color in the rainbow. We'll go with orange. I think that he also kind of wanted the challenge because it was one that was a little bit different. The idea of that is more of a burnt and a fall orange. And then for the Kinfilgia, there's an association between Thor and bears. Not so much in the lore, but in traditional names a lot. Thorbjorn, the bear of Thor, is a very common name across Scandinavia in our ancestors' day, and to this day to a degree. And the black bear is regionally, an important animal in that part of the woods, or in that neck of the woods, in that part of the world. And I think he wanted to incorporate that on there. And that one has it's less monochromatic than Odin's Hoff. It's got, a red tongue, and it's got white claws, and, the white of his eye and the white of his teeth. So that was Svan's design on the bear. And the motto, words are wind, deeds are iron, is from the Ironguard kindred, which was a kindred that Svan led, that kind of merged into becoming the folks that were taking care of the Hoff when we first got it. And so that their traditions and their culture really were a root culture for that Hoff. And so that's why that was chosen for that. Baldur's Hoff flag. We had some different folks at the time, and so we went with color scheme. So, and one of the sad truths about some of our Hoffs is we'll have people who are very, very into it and say they're all about it. But when the reality of having a Hoff and being responsible comes into play, and where this isn't a theory, this isn't a game, this is a very real thing with real responsibilities and real world visibilities. A lot of people discover that they are not made of the stuff that they would have you believe they're made of. So they decided their kindred had a blue background, and it was blue and white was part of their color scheme. And I asked the folks there if they wanted to change it, and they kind of took on the challenge like, no, we're going to keep it the same. We're going to keep that blue. We're going to keep the wolf. The wolf is a noble animal, and we're going to celebrate it. So they went with that. The wolf imagery, I'm not sure who chose that exact design. I think Brandy did. If not, Brandy was very helpful in the figuring of it. And I know Brandy was responsible for the motto, guided by true north. And there's also the North Star Polaris above the wolf's head on that flag. Njordhoff. It's hard for me to remember all these things. So any of our people, if I misremember who did what or whose idea what was, please forgive me. I promise you it's not on purpose. I honestly couldn't tell you who came up with color scheme. The color choice could have been Gothi Lane Ashby, but I'm not sure.
I think most of that all is him.
So it's funny because when we have an idea that multiple people like and we go with, it's hard to know. So the harshest winds make the strongest wood, I believe, is from Lane, which is the motto on that flag. And then I've been a big proponent of the Marlin for a long time. I don't know if that's my Marlin image working with Madison or something that Lane drew up. I know that I worked with her on the Madison or the Marlin for the Cross Gables. I know I've been a proponent of the Marlin for a long time, but I don't know if that's my idea or Lane's or perhaps someone else's. But I know it's something I was um, very big on. And then our newest Hoff, Freyshoff, it is on the most unique, like lightest possible blue you can imagine field. Green is the secondary color, like a hunter green is the secondary color for a lot of things, and it outlines the stag on it. But the white stag is certainly Cliff's idea. That particular image is one Cliff wanted, and we talked with Madison about that. I was on the phone call. We looked at a couple of different images. I believe, I don't know if Cliff found it. He certainly approved of it, and then did some of the tweaks on the color of the antlers and the beard and the hooves. So it's Cliff's composition. By our good names is a evolution of the Lansdale True Folk kindred, which is the Erickson's kindred, and a practice they had of swearing by their good name when they made oaths and things in that kindred. And so that kind of took prominence in the naming and what they want for the motto. And I think it's fantastic. It's a very unique looking flag with a very unique looking color scheme. So that's that. And then, we always have Madison East, Gothi Trinity, or Witten Trin East wife. She does a lot of our digital artwork. She's very talented at that, and she helps us in a lot of ways that way. And every time I'm done with a thing, I'm going to kind of look over to the side for a second, take a swig of my wine here. All right. What is the significance of the Kinfilge in regards each Hoff? Okay, so I talked about Odenshoff and Thorshoff, but then I kind of trailed off on what that was about, and I didn't really give that the time on the next Hoffs, so I will do that now. The wolf was a popular thing, as I mentioned, in that kindred that ended up dissolving and disappearing and abandoning Baldershoff. But in that part of the world, the wolf is still relevant. It's a noble animal, and that's why it ended up being there. But I think why it stayed was the challenge of, redeeming it and empowering it and imbuing it with the noble position that it ought to have. But yeah, that one was kind of one that was thrust upon us a little bit, and we decided to keep and take up the banner of. The Marlin on the Njordshof flag. Njordshof was the first of our Hoffs that had to go somewhere specific. So Thorshoff could have gone anywhere and it would have been fine. But Njordshof really needed to be near the coastline. It really needed to be near the coastline. So we looked around and had I think the most prominent ideas as we were leading up to it, we could have had it in Florida, or we could have had it in coastal Washington. If we would have had it in Washington State, it probably would have been, I don't know, maybe a salmon. Also gave some thought into it being up in New England. I think there's a lot of different sea animals. It could have been up in New England. Maybe it would have been a whale. Would have been cool if it had like sperm whale or something. There's a couple ideas. At one point, we were looking at a property perhaps well, not perhaps, we were looking at a property, but we weren't overly serious or committed to it. We found a really nice option in coastal, like Gulf Coast, Texas, and that would have been cool too. But when it was Florida, it was apparent that the marlin would be perfect symbol, and that's what we wanted to use there. But that all depended on what state it was going to end up being in. It would have looked different in different places. Um, I see that folk builder Ron Boardman of New Hampshire advocates that in New England it should have been or should be the codfish. Perhaps one of these days when we get a Hoff up there, that may come to pass. We will see. And then for Phrasehoff, the stag being, I think there was a number of animals that were kind of self-evident as options. And so that's the thing. It doesn't need to be an animal that is in the lore related to that particular god. It's welcome to be. That's a cool idea, and it's certainly okay. But it can also be something that's relevant to the place or embodies an idea or a spirit of the folk there. Our tradition is a living tradition. But yeah, the stag is a prominent animal to Freyr after he had to sacrifice his sword to win Gerther. He ends up taking up as his weapon the antler of a stag, and so that symbology, that noble, the stag has always been a noble beast amongst our ancestors, and embodying that on the flag, that's why that happened. So yeah, that's that. All right. What is the significance of the Sonnenrad and what does it mean? So, a lot of people, we get questions about that. And so you will notice that around as a halo around the heads of our heroes and our gods, we have a 12-spoked solar disc. And the solar disc, especially with, all right, so I'll pause on that for a sec. The solar disc in general has always been a sacred symbol to our folk from the earliest times of our ancestors. Some of the very earliest depictions, perhaps the earliest that I'm aware of for sure is the Trondheim solar chariot. That's in the museum at Copenhagen, or at least it was when I got to visit it there. And it's really striking, and many of you may be familiar with it. It's I believe a singular horse pulling a chariot with a disc that's leafed in gold on the outside, and some of the leaf is worn away over the millennia, but it's very ancient and very striking, and that was always really important. Early carvings sometimes will have like the equilateral cross in the middle of a circle for a solar cross or the solar disc. In the migration era, maybe even earlier, I'm not certain, the Alemanni tribe in Germany, and other tribes I assume, but it kind of became synonymous with them. In German, it's called a Zierscheibe, and it's just a decorative disc. And they would have this motif on so many different things. And if you Google them or you look them up, they're very, very similar to that 12-spoked solar symbol, Sonnenrad, or, I'm not trying to fool anybody, black sun. And if you look at it, the reason that we get a lot of, ooh, that's edgy or whatever, is it is displayed prominently in Schloss Wewelsburg in Germany that was the Schutzstaffel's headquarters. But the thing that comes into play often with Third Reich imagery and Asatru is we're both hearkening back to an tradition of symbols and spiritual power from our pre-Christian Germanic ancestors. And so there's certainly going to be things that both groups use. This 12-spoked version, this is the most clean, modern version of it, but you can find 12-spoke variants of, again, these very ancient Zierschreibes. Zierscheibes, sorry, for any of our German-speaking audience, I apologize. But yeah, it's a very powerful symbol, and it's solar. It's got the 12 for the 12 months. The completion, the number 12 is very important in our lore and in our practice of Asatru, in material that Svan and I will be going over with you guys shortly in the Gylfaginning when asked to, who are these Aesir? The Aesir are 12. The Aesir that it's beneficial for man to worship or that it's good to call upon are 12. That number of 12 is really important to us. So the 12 spokes, just like the 12, 12 hours on a clock face, are essential to that. The squiggle, yes, it's the sig rune, the victory rune, but it implies that movement, and it's particularly that solar movement. So does, when we're on the topic of these particular kind of symbols, so does the swastika. It's a solar symbol that implies that rotational movement. And that constant movement is essential to concepts in our faith that are really important. It's reinforced in our lore a lot, but the basic idea is to keep moving forward. The idea that forward motion elevates us, moves us forward, leads to victory, leads to ascension. But stasis rather, being still, the lack of movement for a prolonged period leads to entropy. If you stop moving, then you are pulled into chaos and into disintegration, destruction, and chaos. So it's very important to always be moving forward. We see this when in the myths of Sol and Mani having to stay one step ahead of Skol and Haiti, the wolf of mockery and of hatred. We have to stay one step ahead of it, because when that wolf, if you don't, even for a second, the jaws of the wolf begin to close around you. And we see, that was kind of the story told by the eclipse is, the wolf's got him. Let's yell really loud and try to scare it so it can break free. The idea of always staying one step ahead of that destruction, one step ahead. Keep moving forward. That constant movement, the constant progress, the constant upward spiral of ascension is important. In a way, it inspires the name of this program, Victory Never Sleeps. When you win something and then you get lazy and you sit there, that's when entropy and chaos sets in. So you can't ever just rest on your laurels. You have to always be moving forward. And that's why the movement implied in that Sonnenrad motif that we choose to use is so very important to us. But it signifies holiness. It signifies solar might. When it's around the heads of our gods, it's in gold because they're divine beings, they're gods. When it's around our heroes, it's red because these were mortals that exhibited that kind of holiness. So that solar might, that holiness around the heads. And a lot of people might associate haloing with Christianity, but it predates that, and it exists in other cultures that are very not Christian. You see it in Indian art a lot. It's a motif that's not confined to that, but it is one that Christianity also glommed onto for their holy figures. But to differentiate us, that very unique, that very Germanic solar symbol that's not just solar, but it's solar in movement and in that 12-spoked movement. During bloat, under what circumstances? Under what circumstances would it be acceptable to pour the libation down the drain as a form of disposal? Um, so there's a couple things to that. During bloat, never. That would be a horribly unceremonious way to dispose of the liquid. So, spoiler alert: when we do bloat, I have yet to perform a bloat that is awesome enough that the gods literally appear before us and drink the mead. We get that. The mead transfers our energy to them in a different way. There's a lot of symbolism in that, in the way that we offer it, but it creates the practical situation of, yeah, but you have this mead here and the mead needs to go somewhere. What do you do with it? I get, so here is the circumstance, and I'll kind of backpedal. The only circumstance that I think is appropriate two circumstances. I think it is appropriate to pour the libation offering down a drain if you are incarcerated and that is your only option for you doing your ritual, is in a cell or in a spot where there's no option to pour it somewhere else. That's okay. I mean, as opposed to like on the floor. I think that makes sense in that very, very specific circumstance. And then the other one is, and this is one that I guess technically happens, is when it no longer is liquid and it becomes a solid in whatever container that you were using, then yeah, you have to wash your dishes. So I will sometimes make libation offering. I say sometimes, every time I offer a libation in my home, I leave it there and it evaporates over time. And eventually there's, depending upon what liquid it is and how much color and how much sugar's in it or whatever, it leaves a crust on the glass or on the bowl or whatever. And then I'll eventually wash that implement. But way better options are finding something that is a special place to offer it. If you are stuck inside of buildings and you can't go outside, and whatever the reason is, then if you have a plant, if you have like a potted plant, I think that's an acceptable way. If you speak words over it and you make the offering there. In bloat, when we're outside or if we're inside and it's a contained, it's like a real fire pit, it's great to offer it into the fire. Be careful that unless you intend to, you don't douse the fire with the liquid. I say that, it sounds stupid and painfully obvious, but other people have done that before when they first started it. And we're like, oh, better not do that again.
Don't spike the horn either unless you intend.
Well, it was really cool and people thought I did it on purpose. I spiked the horn because it slipped at the wrong time, but I just ran with it. Yeah, so that's an option when it's in the middle of bloat. But something else, so it depends. When you're doing bloat, most often there's 2 horns of mead that go around. And when I say mead, read, beer, wine, whatever liquid you're using for that ceremony. The one that you are offering to the gods, I think it is best to pour it into the fire, or at our hofs, sometimes we'll pour it into a bowl and place that on the altar, giving it to the gods. So that's a good way to do that. But then you get the mead at the end that is used to bless the folk, the mead that's blessed by the gods and distributed amongst the folk, sometimes to drink, sometimes to be asperged with. So, what to do with that mead? If I don't have a different option or a different something to do, sometimes I'll pour that back into the fire as well. But what I like to do at our hofs, to where we have our loved ones interred, I take that mead, the mead that is a gift to us from the gods. And one of the reasons that we want to have our loved ones interred at the hofs is so, in a way, they are participating with us in our religious practice eternally. So I will take that gift to us from the gods and I will pour that upon, those people's graves. And I think that's a good way to share what we're doing with them. If we have, again, I mentioned at the Hof, we'll pour this mead into a bowl and we'll put it on the altar. Well, what happens then? Later that evening or next day, or however the logistics work out, one of the Gothar will take that, and they very often will have the base of a tree that's special to them where they make their offerings and pour it out at the base of that tree. So there's never really a reason for you to pour it down the drain. Like I said, unless you're incarcerated, there's a lot of really nice ways to do it. If you're at your home, find, a tree or a rock on your property that's special, use it for that purpose. Again, if you have to and you're indoors, if you have a potted plant, that's where you make your offerings, that's a good thing to do there too. Do you believe there are any sumptuary laws in Asatru? Is there anything that we should not consume as a rule? I suppose, for that matter, is there anything we should consume as a rule? No. Short answer. I mean, yeah, no, not really. I know some people get very very creative in the significances they might place with food. I know some people will have, sometimes for a period of time, maybe it's because of an oath, maybe it's because of something for their own health, or maybe it's because they feel it's some kind of a ritual purification, will forego eating meat for a certain amount of time, or they may fast altogether for a certain amount of time. That's not, bad. That's not heresy, but it's also certainly not something that's prescribed by the Asatru Folk Assembly as necessary. There's a number of people that like the idea of only eating stuff that their ancestors would have eaten. If it brings those people closer to the gods, or it helps those people feel more connected with their faith, or if they just like that food, then by all means. But again, it's not something you have to do. You're not sinning against our gods by eating Mexican food or Chinese food, or eating exotic foods. But again, like I said, some people prefer to try to eat particularly like their ancestors. And again, if they want to do that and they feel it connects them in some special way and helps make their faith more tangible to them, then by all means. But no, that's not a rule. But what I will say is this is customary. And I suppose this is you don't have to, but it is highly recommended and encouraged when it comes to consumption of things. There was a time in the modern resurgence of Asatru, there's a very heavy drinking culture. We used to have a lot of mead makers. We still have quite a few people that make their own mead to use for ritual use and also to use for enjoying a drink use. But used to be, there was a lot of drinking. It was a lot of single guys. It was less families. And a lot of folks used it as an excuse to drink, and often that drinking was to excess. That's not the AFA culture anymore. but I am not opposed to a drink or several. But what I do think is important, so we go through a phase where a lot of people were drinking too much, and it was too big of a part of stuff that we do. But then it's very easy for a reaction to that to be people discouraging drinking. And then we have people that have a problem with alcohol. They struggle with addiction, or they've made certain choices in their life where they feel it's important and best for them to live nobly that they not consume alcohol. I get that, and there are times where that is where how you are when you drink, and if you can't have a drop because that's what you're going to do, or it's part of a very important thing in your life, we certainly respect that. Sometimes we'll even have a non-alcoholic horn to go with the alcoholic horn so they can feel part of things. But drinking is part of the ritual, specifically ensemble. There is something holy and special when you drink to the point where you have a little bit of an altered state, and it makes you more receptive to sharing of yourself, to receiving kindness from others, to displaying kindness to others that you might not otherwise. So, all things being equal, a part of the rite of Sambal is drinking a little bit. And again, that's not like, hey, everybody come on down and get wasted. But there is something very important to our ancestors about the social lubrication aspect of having a little bit to drink in ritual. And that, you see it expressed probably most profoundly in Tacitus when he writes about the German tribes across the Rhine. He talks about how they will often make, it's very important in their culture to discuss important matters while drinking, because it like I said, it lowers those inhibitions, it lowers those walls, it lets people open up and share in a special way. But then the idea is to like confirm it in the morning when everybody's sober, just to make sure it was a good idea. But there's something that's special with that, and the fact that ale, mead, wine was so important in our religious rites is found throughout our lore, and it comes into one of our, the most well-known magical runic formula, and the formula that kind of exemplifies our worship is alu, or literally ale. So the Ansus, Lagus, Urus runic progression symbolizing, ale or alcohol is that. It's the idea of the divine connected through a medium of liquid to the primal, and the primal connected by a medium of liquid to the divine. We have that. I don't think there's any way to really see it. No, it just gets blurry when I get that close. Anyways, all around the edge of our Gothar rings is a never-ending sequence of Ansus, Lagus, Urus, Lagus, Ansus, Lagus, Urus, in perpetuity, never ending, because that represents the gift cycle from the gods to the earth to us, from us to the earth to the gods. Okay, frivolous question, but we're in a fun mood. Worst possible condiment to use as a salad dressing? Okay, I have never considered that before, so it takes me a second here. I will not torture you with having me silently think for over long. Off the top of my head, without abusing the audience, barbecue sauce.
That's what came to my mind.
Yeah, I think that would be and I don't know if it'd be horrible, but it would certainly not be my go-to.
Wasabi
I
or
think they're looking for
horseradish.
something that's in a sauce kind of form, but they didn't specify, so it counts.
I mean, I've got a bottle of like horseradish for whatchamacallit, horseradish sauce.
Yeah, like creamed horseradish. Horseradish might be an interesting choice.
Little goes a long way.
Depends on the person, I guess. Um, what are some Yuletide traditions to do with a daughter? I don't know. And if Spawn was on here, I'm sure he would have some ideas for you. I can't think of anything that I do with my daughter or anything, Yule related or anything that I've heard of that folks do Yule related that's kind of daughter specific. And again, there may be something that's like mother daughter, but I don't think of any like specific father daughter Yule traditions on that. But put a pin in that because I'm going to ask Swan and see if he gives me a better answer, and I'll try to present that to you when I find it out. He is really good at developing his own like family Yule traditions. He's really cool at that. Next question, also on the frivolous side, but fun. Speaking of daughters, hello. So, coffee, tea, or hot chocolate, and why? Okay, baby. So, without context, coffee. Other things I've got to be in a mood for, or they're situational. I mean, if I said tea, you've got infinite variety of tea, so that's cheating. So it's like, yeah, you got a lot of varieties there. Tea's a strong contender for that, but there's coffee. There's like, I can't really think of much any time I wouldn't enjoy a cup of coffee. Like, hey, can I get you a cup of coffee? I don't imagine a time that I would say no, especially because I am caffeine immune or caffeine resistant, certainly mentally, to where it's not like those things keep you up. Um, it's kind of a nice thing to drink before bed for me is to drink coffee. So I'm gonna say coffee for those reasons. Nick, what say you on that one?
Caffeine and ADHD are my superpowers. So, yes, I will literally drink coffee from the time I wake up to the time I go to bed. I'll probably have at least 2 more cups before this.
Yeah, coffee. So I was going to say, and you got reasons in there, or whatever. All of those are intended to be consumed warm. I say that there's no slam at iced tea or iced coffee for that matter, but in general, those are all warm drinks. So warm doesn't specify. But at AFA events, I'll start drinking coffee, and because it's something to do and it's there, I'll just kind of drink it all day. I don't ever feel mentally the effects of coffee. Like I don't feel the effects of caffeine. I will drink, 4 energy drinks in the course of, a road trip or whatever, and it not notice an energy boost at all. The thing is, when I start getting north of 10 cups of coffee, I will notice at some point my hand will start to shake. So it's doing something to me, but nothing that, I feel like it's making me jittery or I feel like I'm, have increased alertness or anything. But that's just me, or maybe it's just me and Nick. This is an interesting question, and I saw it when it got. Oh, so I should have said this. Always good time to plug this. So many of the questions you'll see tonight are emailed to us beforehand. If you have a question you want us to answer on the show, whenever that might strike you, email vns@runestone.org. And we'd be happy to answer your question very next opportunity. We get a lot of questions that way. A number of you guys, we have some pretty regulars that way, and we get some one-offs that way. So please feel free to do that literally at any time, including during this broadcast.
And it assures you get to the front of the line because we're still not through emailed questions yet.
So there you go. I appreciate you guys coming hard with questions today. Me just sitting here looking pretty. There's a time for that, but I think that time runs out pretty quick. What is something that you've had to lay aside in order to maintain your AFA affiliation? So I think this is a profound question. I would love to hear what some other people's answers are. Personally, it's hard because I am in a unique position and I have been able to structure my life for the last 15 years towards making this an increasing part of my life. There's very little of my life that isn't defined by my AFA membership and my relationship with the gods and with our folk. So it's hard because something I've had to lay aside. And I'll give kind of a bonus answer that's not really the answer because I don't want to cheat the Angela who asked the question. But I don't feel like I have had to lay aside anything because this is my dream and it's absolutely, I was going to say it's what I want to do with my life, but it's more than that. It is beyond my wildest dreams of what I would be able to do with my life. So I don't feel like there's something I've had to lay aside for it. But I've always been very open with my family about my faith, and I've always been very open with employers and with, I have been able to be very, very open about my faith and my affiliation with the AFA. So that's never been a thing. But I have had to suffer a lot of personal betrayals and lost friendships when people are when AFA members choose to turn on us for whatever reason they turn on us. When I say they turn on us, very often because of who I am and my responsibilities and the position I'm in, it's very specifically and very pointedly turning on me. So I've dealt with a lot of that from people that I dearly loved and cared about, and that's a lot. And it's a double tap because it's not just that I deal with the personal betrayal, but when I see the way it affects my wife, that's the hardest part of that. And so that is very much a penalty because of my AFA affiliation. And I'd pay it a million times over, and I don't begrudge it for it. I mean, I begrudge it with those people, but in the course of my fortunes in life, I could have, 100 times of that, and I'm still a very, very lucky man. The follow-up question to it, though, what have you had to do to defend the AFA to others? Thank you. So, again, I've been fortunate. I think these are really good questions. And I would love to hear a number of our leaders answer these questions. My answers are lame and I don't mean them to be. But again, I'm in that unique spot where I am wired into the AFA and the AFA is hardwired into me. So I don't feel that kind of separation. All of my friends, I have friends from high school or whatever that aren't AFA members, but all of my friends that I've made as an adult that are like close to me, or that their opinion matters to me in an important way to my family, are members of the AFA. I've just been able to build my life that way. So I don't have the same personal fights to defend. My family has been ambivalent to religion. So I broke with Jehovah's Witnessism as a separate matter from my AFA affiliation. So their severing ties with me wasn't because I am Asatru or because I became the high priest or the Allsherjargoði of a pagan organization. Their break with me was because I stopped being a Jehovah's Witness. So I've never had the conversation with them about Asatru or the AFA. My dad and my mom was, generic belief in God and Christianity because you're supposed to, but that wasn't a big issue that she raised with me, or that we had any kind of, I don't think we ever had a conversation on it. I mean, she was aware of all of the steps, and I suppose it, developed my affiliation with the AFA grew naturally. So I never really had to defend the AFA to her. I haven't had to defend it with my dad or with my stepmom. Again, they're both not religious, and I think what has served me well is those people know me, and so they are aware of who I am, and they assume that I'm not whatever monster that other people would say I am because they've known me for a long time. I end up defending the AFA to, I don't know, to reporters or to people who ask questions on social media or whatever else, often because of my position as Allsherjargoði, but none of that really stands out a lot because it's just my job all the time. So it doesn't like stand out as a time I've had to be on super defense about the AFA. But yeah, in any of the interviews I've done, I think that's when I've had to defend the AFA most, and you can see most of those on this channel. There's a couple that were in newspapers that I did. But yeah. Good evening and happy Yule, Allsherjargoði Matt and Folk Builder Nick. I'm planning on going to Catholic Christmas Mass tomorrow to make my mom happy. Should I? No, absolutely not. I'm not going to participate in any rituals. Thanks for all that you do. Well, you're welcome. No, you shouldn't do that. And I say that I get it, and my answer would be different if you were like, hey, my brother's getting married in a Catholic service, can I attend his wedding? I think that's different because it's not an inherent worship service. It's showing up for celebrating his wedding, similar with a funeral. But I think showing up for a religious service, showing up for Mass, I think that would be inappropriate as an Asatruer, and I would advise that you don't do that. I understand the logic of you're not participating, you're just observing. I could see if you were, I don't know, a reporter or an investigative, something, or you were doing research for some kind of a school project or something. But as far as attending as one of the parishioners, I think, at midnight Mass tonight or whatever, there's probably a lot of people that are not devoutly Catholic that are going there. They're still parishioners at a religious service. And, I don't think it's the end of the world. I don't think that you'll be cast immediately to the strand if you do, but I would advise against doing that. Good Yule question for the show tonight. Is donating to the AFA a form of participation, or can it be one, in the gift cycle with the gods as a type of financial sacrifice, particularly if it's to a half of one of the gods? Or is that purely a donation to the AFA and other forms of bloat are the correct sacred ones to the ICER? Thanks. So I was talking to Nick before the show on this one. Almost the exact same question came in last week, but it came in from a completely different person. So maybe there's something in the air or people are wondering, and I'm happy to answer it. So, yes, all of the above. And it's not an either or proposition, or at least I don't feel that it is or it should be. Donating to the AFA is absolutely part of the gifting cycle. I think donating to the AFA generally is a act of participation in that cycle with the gods as the ICer generally. I think if you are doing it as a gift or an offering to a particular one of our gods, I think you can make that statement in front of your altar with that commitment, and I think that counts as part of that. I also, as you mentioned, if you donated, like today, I was asking people to donate to Phrasehoff. If you donated towards paying off Phrasehoff, yes, I think that's absolutely a gift and an offering to Freyr, and I think that's completely appropriate. Um, yeah, I don't. It's never purely a donation to the AFA as if that were unconnected from the gift cycle with our gods. It's not. And the same goes beyond just monetary contribution. Every time you volunteer to help at one of the Hoffs, or to folk build for the AFA, or to, spread the word and bring people to the AFA, help with any of the repairs at the Hoff, help participate in building this that we're doing, I think that's absolutely a gift to our gods and is part of that gift cycle in a really important way. I wouldn't, I wouldn't let that. It would be wrong-headed to be like, I don't need to do bloat. I gave the office. I don't need to do bloat. I would encourage you absolutely to do bloat and do that in connection with other Asatru who are doing it. Standing in ritual with your fellow AFA brothers and sisters is a very important part of our ritual process. So I wouldn't do the one and not the other, but absolutely donations count. Those are absolutely an offering and a part of that gift cycle, and I believe that the ICR appreciate them very much. Glad Yule. Was Yule at Odin? Oh, how was Yule at Odin's this year? I started off the show by telling you that. It was awesome. It's great every year. Every year it feels like it's even more awesome than it was the last year. I think that's just because it's fresh in our minds, but it was fantastic. And I was very excited to be able to be there. And I mentioned I felt like we had a really powerful bloat, and it was just a great time. All right. Question: is the Indo-European Sky Father Lord Odin or Lord Tyr? So I want to attack the question. If you are referring to the Proto-Indo-European supposed Deus Pater named deity, then I think it's a fine question. If you're referring to the Sky Father function that George Dumazil, and it's the French pronunciation, but I don't know how to make the French noises. But if you are proposing that, who fills that function, it's not the God's jobs to fill functions. It is our understanding of the functions that are common themes in Aryan mythology. It helps us to make connections and to understand, but our gods aren't beholden to the theories of academics. Academics' jobs is to better understand the gods or the culture that the gods inspired. So both serve Sky Father like functions. Um, I think the understanding of the most ancient Aryan deities is all very speculative. You'll see even the language has like it's kind of retrograde, it's assumed by its descendants of what must have been the case, but we don't have a lot of primary material. So it's hard to say exactly. The cognate with that term is certainly Tyr. I think both of them serve a Sky Father function in terms of regality and order, in terms of supremacy of things. I think that whereas Tyr certainly is a more obvious association with the bright day sky, I think the Allfather Odin is associated more with the dark night sky. But I think both of them have elements of that to them. The direct lineal descendant of that term, Sky Father or Deus Pater, would be Tyr. But the functionality, again, our gods aren't theories, so these gods were with us at that time. What they were known by, or how ancient steppe Caucasians understood their relationship with Odin and Tyr. I'd be very curious to know that. And I think that's something that maybe further archaeology will help us understand. It'd be awesome if it did, but that might remain a mystery as well. All right. Would you say that Asatru can also be viewed in an animistic way in certain aspects? No, I would not say that. I understand why some people, however, might say that, but no, I would not say that. So, and I think that when I explain the differences, they may seem small, but I think they make all the difference in the world. So, for example, a sacred tree or a sacred rock isn't sacred because the tree is alive, or because, and with the asterisk, yes, it's a tree. I understand plants are alive, but that the tree is some kind of a spiritual being, and that the rock is some kind of a spiritual being. A tree or a rock can be sacred, but they are sacred because they house a spiritual being, one of the Landvetir, or because they are particularly sacred to a spiritual being. I guess in the smallest, maybe most accessible sense that a lot of people could relate to, my mom's tombstone is sacred. It's not because the tombstone is alive, it's because it is a marker marking the remains of my mom. And in a particular way, the spirit of my mom is accessible through interaction with the tombstone, and it is sacred to my mom. But none of us would think the tombstone itself is alive. And I think that, this goes to when we talk about animism in terms of inanimate objects, not in terms of animals that, do have a personality and a self, But when we're talking about trees or rocks or anything else, the logic doesn't bear out. So every rock has a soul and is a being. Well, all of those rocks were eventually bigger rocks. So does a new soul spawn every time I break a rock into a smaller piece? And if so, if we're on the beach, does every single grain of sand have a spirit and a personality, and are they a being? And I think that very quickly we run into like, no, that doesn't make any sense. Some people will get that way with trees. Like every tree has a character. So you're just slaughtering all these trees to make a house or to make whatever you're doing. That doesn't seem right if that's the sense. Like literally, you're just burning them for firewood. But logically, though, so okay, does every like blade of grass, does every flower or every weed or every, we don't feel that that's the case. And I think fundamentally we don't feel that's the case. We just think the really big, cool looking ones do. And my argument is, yeah, the really big, cool looking ones are sacred to a land spirit. And so you can commune with the land spirits at that spot in a special way. Just like I talked about earlier on where to pour out your offerings. You can pour out offerings at a special tree or a special rock, and those are special sacred places, but it doesn't mean that that rock is a person or that that tree is a person. They are sacred to spiritual persons and can serve as a medium of interacting with the spirit world. I hope that made sense. If it doesn't, please follow up with question. But hopefully that got the point out. So Githya Sarah Alt wants me to tell you guys about the Asatru Academy and about how awesome it is. So an important kind of thing to note, we've been trying to build it up over, I think, the last 4 years now. We have known that there was a need for AFA homeschooling for, as long as I've been involved in the AFA. As we've watched situations in our part of the West get more and more degenerate in recent years, the dire need for that has increased tremendously. But figuring out how to do that right has always been the challenge. So a number of years ago, we found some of the right people. And Githya Sarah, go through Rob Stam, Githya, Hoff Githya, Sheila McNallen, and a number of volunteers and others are helping with our Asatru Academy program. But it is so exciting and special to be in a time where we have that for our children now. We are working off of the Waldorf program of education, which I really like. Some parents, may or may not, but I really like the focus on experiential learning and, less sitting around and doing worksheets and stuff. That's just not the way that I typically learn or the way that I like to learn. It's also not the way I think is most effective, but everybody learns a little bit different. But it's been great. And I say that I was very excited about that and wanting that very much as a Gothi and as a leader in Asatru, but all the more so personally, I'm excited about it as a father. Aubrey is, now halfway or whatever through the kindergarten 1, which is kind of like a preschool level curriculum. So we've been doing that. It is really cool. It's a really cool program. The idea is, and I believe now it is, and we have the necessary supplemental material for the very difficult states, but it is legitimate for all 50 states now.
Good bit of
And
Canada too.
and there's certain provinces in Canada that it works in. There's others that it doesn't. So if you're a Canadian member, you might need to find out for sure. Um, but the real strength of it is having our leaders and our volunteers in that program who will hold your hand and help you through understanding how to do it. One of the big fears of parents is that, you know, uh-oh, but what if this doesn't count? What if this isn't good enough? What if the state doesn't accept this? What if? Um, no, it's very reassuring to have people that will help you and make sure it's legit and help walk you through it. And yeah, that confidence, that peace of mind is a huge part of it. It's very exciting. Sarah can fill us in here if she's got numbers, but a very healthy number of kids taking part in that this year, which is awesome. Um, the more kids that we have, as that grows, the kids interact more and more. The parents are able to interact more and support one another. And we learn every state that we get children in, we learn different intricacies of how it works in their state. Every different time a child goes through this, we have a different skill set of being able to learn from things and help, what worked really good and what are some great ideas. So it's awesome. It's run by amazing people. I'm very excited to have my daughter as part of it. And yeah, it's a great thing. So we should have a full K through 12 curriculum very, very soon. We're working on getting those high school years taken care of here in the next few months. So stay tuned. And yeah, we're very proud of our people running that program and our students who are being educated in that program.
And we even the years and the courses and classes that we've passed and done, and we have enough to satisfy. We're always adding on to them as well. Just yesterday, I dropped a introduction to needle felting. I'd never even heard of needle felting, but now we're going to learn about needle felting.
There you go. There you have it. Needle felting. I'm not even sure what that is.
Well, we're going to learn.
There you go. Hopefully I'll see some finished projects by some of these kids. So, can I leave a monetary offering to say Odin or Thor and then give the money to the AFA, or do I need to leave a physical offering such as a drink or food? Yeah, we just kind of answered that a little bit earlier, but you can do both, certainly. Monetary offerings they're very legitimate, and this doesn't take away. Like, I offer food and drink all the time. It's very important. We should never stop doing that. Money makes some things happen, and I don't know. Maybe you guys heard about this when I was talking about it. You might have seen it in the video. There was a little video out there about the dedication of Phrasehoff. But when we dedicate a Hoff, it's not just that we give it a name and hey, this is a thing now. It is very particularly, we present it as a gift to that God. That is what the point of that ritual is that we do. And it is a big, profound offering that I'm able to make on behalf of the Asatru Folk Assembly to that God. That counts. Doing real things counts. And when I say real things, like making real strides in the world, building the Asatru Folk Assembly, building the infrastructure to have Hoffs, to have institutions to educate our children in a way that will raise them to be good Asatruar and to keep strong their troth to the Aesir. All those things are offerings to the gods in a way that is particularly useful and special. Making a monetary donation absolutely counts and is very much appreciated and accomplishes the things we've been able to accomplish. It was yesterday I was posting about, oh, thank you, baby. How, hey, you. So I was talking about what we've been able to accomplish in this last year. Thank you, sweetheart. In, because of people's monetary generosity, we've been able to, we donate every quarter to help our folk in South Africa who are targeted because they are the same race as us. We help those people in different ways by giving monetary payouts to local organizations that are providing food and security for them. We were able to help them. We've been able to, every month help do food pantries for people who are struggling in our communities. Every month, the AFA is able to feed somewhere around between 150 and maybe 100, somewhere between 150 and maybe 190 families. We were able to pay off a very substantial remaining balance on Jordshof and raise enough to purchase or to certainly put down the down payment for Frazehoff and get it 33% of the way paid off. So money does that, and y'all's generosity is where that money comes from, and it's a gift to the gods, and it's something that it absolutely counts, and it makes these real things happen. So thank you for those who give, and we appreciate it. Do you guys celebrate Christmas? No, we don't celebrate Christmas. We do celebrate the 6th day of Yule, though. And we often celebrate the 6th day of Yule with the Yule tree and with the Yule spirit, the Yule Elf, Father Yule. We give gifts. We do all the fun things about Christmas, but without the manger or the undead Jewish fella. So Christmas happens to fall within Yuletide, and most of the fun things that you like about Christmas are Asatru things. But no, we don't celebrate Christmas. Question for the Allsherjargoði, and this is a long one, so I apologize. No need to apologize. We like long questions. The Romans had Saturnalia, their Yule, which honored the god Saturn. And the Greeks had Chronia, which was similar. So was Yule in honor of a particular god or Aesir. I know that the Anglo-Saxons referred to their mothers and female ancestors during Yule, or revered rather, I'm sorry. So maybe it operated differently. Okay, yeah, that's the question. So sure, I imagine in different places, different people put an emphasis on different gods around Yule time. One of the differences is it's like a period of time and not just a one-day thing. So specifically, when you mentioned the mothers, that was something done at Mother's Night. But I think it's a time for celebration of the gods altogether. We don't have a lot of source material on exactly how it was practiced by Viking Age people, other than that it was. You mentioned the Mother's Night tradition, but I think something that is telling is that one of the bynames for Odin was Yulnir, or like the Yule man, or the Yule male person, Yulnir. But also a kenning for the Aesir as a group was Yulnar, which is the collected, the Yule beings. So there are, I think when people, at least in a modern context, want to pick a particular god to associate with Yule, it's very often Odin, but I think it's proper to worship all of our gods in celebration at Yule time. And usually when I do a Yule bloat, it's a bloat to all of the Aesir. And that's what I do. But what exactly our ancestors did, I think that probably depends on place and what cult of which god was particularly prominent in a particular area.
Speaking of coffee, we just got a couple more.
Excellent. Yay, Steve just bought us 2 more coffees. Thank you very much, Steve. We appreciate it. Where did the idea of a Papa Yule or Opa Yule, as we have at Odenshof, come about? Is this something practiced at all hofs or just few? I think it's just something practiced at Odenshof. It is a fun way to have a personification of the spirit of Yule giving gifts. It is like a rolling back of the idea of Santa Claus before it was associated with a Turkish saint. So the idea of a figure coming and bearing gifts, often in Scandinavian tradition, on the back of a goat. You have that idea of the spirit of Yule that gives these gifts. Sometimes it was thought of as like a tomta or some kind of a small elf creature that delivers the stuff, but it's something part and parcel with European tradition that's kind of the roots of Santa Claus before it got overlaid on a Turkish Christian saint. So it's kind of a throwback to that. It's more of a fun thing for the kids than it is like a important point of theology, but it is something that they've always done at Odenshof. Originally, that role was played by Gothi Thorgren Odin, who passed away recently, and so now it is done by member Jim Erickson.
Well, shout him out. Nick McCloskey actually does it at Njordshof as well. And folk builder Mike Melillo, instead of Yule, he does his old Krampus thing up at Freyshof.
Well, there you have it. Hail Victory. I'm new to this. Is drinking mead a sacred action on Yule? If so, I offer this mead to the Allfather. May the gods bear steel with all of you. So, drinking mead isn't sacred. It depends what you're doing with it. There's long traditions that making toasts over alcoholic beverage is a sacred thing. And that can be done in Sumble. That can be done as a private, reverential thing. That can be done in the course of normal drinking, is take a moment like, hey, everybody pipe down. Hey, this one's for the Allfather. Hail Odin. It can be as simple as that, or it could be as elaborate as our high Sumble. But yeah, mead is a very traditional drink for our folk to use as an offering to the gods. Something, the root of the word God is it's an Aryan word, and it goes to the tribe of the Goths is named after that. And it roots back to the concept of the ones that libation is poured out to. So offering sacred libation, sacred alcoholic drink, or other liquid offering to the gods is the most ancient and most sacred where those words came from. The word bloat, a lot of people linked it with blood, and I can't say there's not like a pairing or a link, because they're both, blood is a liquid, but very specifically the word blood in Old Norse is a different word. The word blood and bloat look different, and the difference is in the little dash over the O. it meant to, to pour out offering to. So the idea of pouring out a libation as that primary way of making offerings to the gods is the most ancient way, and linguistically the one that stuck with us. So yeah, absolutely, drinking alcohol, making a toast, pouring out a toast to one of the gods is a very important and sacred rite within Asatru. Can someone with only Irish ancestry practice Asatru with the AFA? There's no real Celtic folk association, and so it's hard to find good association. Absolutely. Come on home. The AFA is pan-Aryan, and when people want to take different branches of Aryan divinity or different pantheons that are Aryan pantheons, I think that the logic doesn't play out. The Aryan gods are our gods back to the beginning. They were known by different stories and different names by different segments of our ancestors due to time and place and linguistic development and particular relationships developed between a specific group of people and the gods. But if we follow the logic, these are the gods of our race. When Aryan people landed in Ireland, new gods didn't just spring forth for them. Their gods are the same gods that their forefathers in Gaul had, that their forefathers on the steppe had, that all of our people had at the very beginning of our race. Those are the gods that shaped us, and they've been with us and are with us still ever since the beginning, just as they'll be with our descendants so long as those descendants are us. But yeah, we would encourage all of our Irish brothers and sisters to join the Asatru Folk Assembly and come home to our shared gods, the gods of our folk, the Aesir. And yes, the AFA worships them and conceives of them in the Norse nomenclature and the Norse understanding, because that's congruent. It fits together. It is an orderly process, and that is the context that the relationship with them was, rebuilt and reestablished in the last century. That's the understanding that awoke the folk soul and that brought our folk home. And it's worth noting that, the one that the All-Father spoke to bring this into motion, to bring the Asatru Folk Assembly into existence, is an Irishman. And he's half Irish, half German, but Steve McNallen of the clan McAnallen of the County Tyrone, an Irishman who's very proud of his Irish heritage, is the founder of our church, of the Asatru Folk Assembly. So yeah, come on home. We would love to have you. Does the AFA have any plans to pursue political positions, maybe in a small town somewhere? Like the AFA specifically running candidates? That is one thing that we are prohibited in our current function. I believe that we could open up a subcategory to our 501c3 under that umbrella that would be handled separately if we wanted to do that. But no, the AFA as a body does not have any plans in running specific candidates. But I absolutely encourage our members individually to run for office any and every place they find themselves. Your idea of taking political offices in small towns or small counties, I am 100% on board with, and I would love for our folks as individuals to do that. That's something for individual people to pursue, though, and the AFA can't be part of that in a way that where we're pushing it or like the AFA is running the candidate. But any and all AFA members, I would encourage you to be, as politically involved as you would like to be and you feel called to be. And I think that taking positions again in local government is a very, very good start to get our people represented in that way. Favorite holiday cookie. Nick, what's your favorite holiday cookie?
Oh, I don't know about cookie, but I just had some lemon cranberry bars that were amazing.
Oh, that sounds awesome. Um, Man, it's hard because there's a lot of so like my daughter literally just brought me up a cookie that she and her mother were making downstairs and it was delicious. Um, I don't know what you call them, but like, and again, this is a little bit afield from cookie, but I think it's in the spirit of cookie. Man, I'm not sure what you call them, but like little brownie cup things with cherries in them, with like what is it, cherry pie filling? I don't know, but anyways, those kind of gooey red, significantly altered cherries in the like brownie thing are
You,
awesome.
you can have them. I don't do chocolate and cherries.
What what is wrong with you?
I don't do chocolate and orange either. That's another holiday thing.
What?
No.
Stop. Okay, cool. You
Chocolate and
can go back to
strawberry
the
fine.
announcer chair. We've heard enough from you.
I was gonna say
Um,
though, it's a very simple cookie I just thought of, but I remember my mom making it all the time. It's just a little sugar cookie with the Hershey's Kiss on it.
yes, I ate some
It's
of those
a
last
simple
night. My
thing, but
friend's
it's
wife
nostalgic
sent me
for
those.
it. Yeah.
Those are awesome. You are woefully mistaken. Chocolate and orange is the best. Chocolate and cherry is
Oh,
probably the second best. They're both amazing. Any of those items you would like to send towards Nick, please divert them my way, and I will consume all of them. Um, but yeah, that's probably my favorites on that. The thing with the Hershey's Kiss is awesome, but the kiss never stays in there. They always break apart, and it's like they're two separate things. But I will still gladly eat all of them.
you can do the thumbprint cookies with the jam on them are great too.
Yeah, there. I mean, you got to do something wrong to mess up cookies. They're all pretty good. Ah, are there Asatru hermits, or is this mainly a family-oriented religion? Um, it's an interesting question, and I'm kind of curious the background of the person asking or whatever. It's one of the yes, this is a community religion. It is always in our ancestors' time. It is best done in community. Community is so important. This is something you do with your folk and your family. But for a long time in modern Asatru, there are a lot of people still who aren't around other Asatru are. Maybe they're geographically in a spot where they don't have access. Yes, you can practice Asatru by yourself, and you can be someone who is reclusive, and that's what you do, and that's how you interact with your gods. That's absolutely appropriate. You can absolutely do that. It is better if you do it with a group. It is, the best way or the most traditional or most appropriate way is to do it with the community and to come together at Hofs or in a group of people if you don't have a Hof near you and practice. But you can absolutely do it, practice on your own, and that's not wrong. It's not as good as doing it with the rest of us, but that's not wrong. And there are people that do that individually, and there's also, you know, there's people that are just kind of loners that don't like groups and maybe only interact with a group a couple of times a year and do things on their own at other times. I wouldn't let that be something that would prevent you from practicing Alsatru or even for joining the AFA for that matter. But yeah, the best version of it is being able to do this with the community. But yeah, don't let that stop you though. Happy Yule, Allsherjargoði. If you had to pick one of the Aesir above all the others to honor for this holy tide, who would it be? I reject the premise. I would not do that. So here's my thing, and I get strange about it. I get the question you're asking, and I think it depends who and where. So I celebrated at Odenshoff. If I could only pick one, and by whatever magic I was only allowed to pick one, then I would pick Odin. I was at Odenshoff. But if I was celebrating it down at Njordshof, then I would celebrate Njordur. So I don't think it's a question of that. I think it's more of what the circumstances that compelled me to make such a choice. What I do say that I feel personally, and I don't think everyone has to do this or has to feel this way. Personally, though, I try to be very conscious that I don't, especially for something like Yule, that I don't leave anyone out. That, I want to make sure that I'm pious and I want to make sure I remember all of our gods and our goddesses. And so I kind of go through a certain amount of mental making sure that I don't accidentally leave someone out when I'm doing a rite to all of the gods. That's really important to me. I don't ever want somebody left out by omission. It's fine to focus on one of the gods for a ritual, but it's I would never want to accidentally leave someone out. And that's something maybe I think on more than I ought to. What is your favorite Yule beverage and why is it the Plurds mulled cider? I've never had the Plurds mulled cider, so it is not my favorite beverage, but it does sound delicious. Um, yeah, some version of that, usually a mulled wine would be my choice. Um, Glühwein. I've had a lot of different recipes. I can't say I have, some recipe that's better than all the other recipes, but I would say mulled, a good mulled wine I absolutely love during holidays. Suppose I'd love it during any other time, but specifically during Yule, it's a special treat. We had some when I had folks over for my monthly dinner a little bit earlier this month. Nick in Ohio donated $10 to VNS. Thank you, Nick. We appreciate it. I see pictures and it seems y'all got so much going on, but how do I find out when and where stuff's happening? So that is easy. The best resource for that. Okay, so a couple of things. Get in touch with your local folk builder and they can get you dialed in and they can clue you in on where stuff is and who to contact and they can do all that stuff. If you are just looking because you're curious and you want to look first, we have a comprehensive calendar of all of our stuff at runestone.org/calendar. And at each of our Hoff websites, we have calendars on each of those sites with the events going on in that particular district. Now, our Hoff districts are very large because we have only 5 Hoffs to service the entire world. So everything is broken up into one of our 5 Hoff districts. Nick, if you would show people a map of those districts. Behold the Hoff districts as they sit now. If you're looking at this map, basically, Alaska and Hawaii are not included in this map, but they're in the Odenshoff district, as are Australia and New Zealand. And if you draw a line straight, if you follow these colors and you draw a line straight up, that is the portion of Canada that's in each of Odenshoff, Baldershoff, and Freyeshoff district. If you are in South America or the Caribbean, you are in Njordshoff district. Also, you are in Njordshoff district if you are in South Africa. If you are in Southern Europe, you are in the Thorshoff district. And if you are in Northern Europe, you are in the Freyeshoff district. Other than that, these are the districts on the map. So, like I said, each of these websites has a calendar on it with things that are going on in the districts. But default to runestone.org, that calendar is always updated and it's always all of the things going on throughout the AFA. And also, for anything additional, if you ask your local folk builder, they'll get you dialed in and help you get that sorted out. Could you share a memory of Gothi David James? So, for folks that might not know, Gothi David James was the first of our Gothar who passed beyond the veil while still a Gothi of the Asatru Folk Assembly. And I'd have to stop and look, but I want to say he passed in 2015, maybe. Could be wrong. 2014? Nick? Nick, you made a noise.
Yes, 14. Yes.
2014. That's a year off. My fault. 2014.
How dare you be wrong?
I know. It's rare, but it happens. So I did not get to know him tremendously well, but I did meet him on a couple of occasions. He came out to so he was involved in Asatru very early on. He was at the first AFA Asatru Free Assembly All Thing back in 1980. Yeah, he'd been around for a very long time, involved in modern Asatru. He was the one who created the or initiated the tradition we have before we do ritual in the AFA. Our ladies go and they bless the mead off by themselves in a special ceremony. That was originally Gothi David James's idea. And it's something the AFA still does to this day. Yeah, he'd been around for a very long time. When I met him, he was at so the AFA used to, way back when, there was one event a year, and it was at the time that I met him, it was Midsummer in the Sierras, and we were doing it at a Camp Norga, which was a Sons of Norway camp in Alta, California, and that's where we hosted this event. And he was there, a very old man at the time. He did a class on naming traditions, and he talked about that's the picture Nick's showing right now is him from that first All Thing. But he did a class on naming and like ideas on naming, what our ancestors used to do in terms of naming. And he talked, one point he made was like, don't name your children the names of the gods. If you want to name them in honor of the gods in some way, then you hyphenate, hyphenate's not the right word. You conjoin two things, like I mentioned earlier in the broadcast, Thorbjorn or Thorstein or Thorbert, or things that way, which are all names that incorporate the name of one of the gods, but it's, Thor's bear or the rock of Thor or, those kind of things. He talked about how if you had a ancestor and you wanted to if you wanted to name one of your children after either an ancestor or a hero or someone who has a Christian name or a Hebrew name because they have a biblical name, trying to kind of retroactively figure out what does that name translate into and what would the closest Aryan name be to that. So, and now off the top of my head, I'm trying to think of the meanings of a bunch of different Hebrew names that I just don't know. But if like whatever the Hebrew version of spear warrior is, oh, okay, then you would name them Gerald because that's what that means in a Germanic name. So basically, the idea of taking foreign names if your ancestor happened to be given one, and then um, finding an equivalency in an appropriate area name to pass down your line. So he was talking about naming and poetics. He was a poet. He wrote poetry, and he would give classes on those things. And it was good. I was very honored that I got to meet him there. I also got to meet him again another time at a couple of years later. We started hosting winter nights in the Poconos at a camp called Camp Natimus in Pennsylvania. And I met him there, spent time with him there as well. So, yeah, there's him and Thorgrim, the only two of our Gothar who have so far passed while still right with their ordination. Thorgrim just happened to be giving him a ride. I believe that's at Camp Norga. But yeah, there's those two together. That's the most I've really got on him because again, I only met him those couple of times. But he was one of the original guys that was doing this in the early 80s. I mean, there were folks doing it in the 70s, and I don't know how involved he was in the 70s, but I know he was at that first hall thing and was very involved in his life and made Asatru a big part of his life throughout. Can women in South Africa marry American men and evacuate to America? It is hard to watch our people being hunted. Legitimate marriages, of course. Yes, as far as I know. As far as I understand it, yeah. I believe marriage to an American citizen, gets you set up to become an American citizen yourself or as a fast track to that citizenship. I don't know. You would want to ask a lawyer and ask people who know this very specifically. I've never had to deal with that, but that is my understanding of how that works. And I appreciate that you specified legitimate marriages. We take marriage really seriously in the Asatru Folk Assembly. From time to time, people ask, if we'll do their marriage for them, and then they want to do one that's not legally recognized or legally binding. So it's important to point out, I know this isn't the question that you asked, but it is a point I want to make. In the Asatru Folk Assembly, our Gothar only perform weddings that are legally binding, that are state recognized weddings where that's a thing in the country that you're in. Some countries may or may not have those kind of requirements or have that kind of situation with clergymen, but here in the United States, every one of our Gothar only provides legally binding real weddings. I have brain damage from a tumor. I'm recovering from neurosurgery now. I may have deficits for the rest of my life. What advice can you offer spiritually? What gods should I call on? Think for a sec.
I feel like that drink is you're tossing it off to Svan to start.
A little bit, yeah. That's the thing. I got a lot of wine left over because busy talking and not drinking, and I don't have Svan to play off of. So the details of what it looks like depends on your particular brain injury and just kind of what capabilities you have or what capabilities you don't. You'd have to kind of shape it to your circumstance. I think any of the gods would be very appropriate to call on for your situation. I think in terms of healing and healing through injury, I would call on Air, EIR. She is the greatest of healers. She is one of the handmaidens of Frigg, and she helps those who are calling on her for healing. Um, but I think any of the gods are appropriate. You don't cease being you because you have a brain injury, and that's what I would also venture as my spiritual advice. Don't be don't make your identity the brain damage cripple. If that's the situation you find yourself in, you're still you, and that's what should guide your choice of what God to interact with or which gods to call on, I think, more than your circumstance. Don't let that define you. There's a lot of ways that you can contribute and do things, and again, those are going to depend on what you can and can't do. What I would say to anybody in general, but particular to people who are working through something or who have some kind of a limitation or some kind of something they're recovering from, but you should absolutely seek out your folk. If you're not a member, you should join the AFA. Yes, I know I'm plugging the AFA, but it's literally my job, and I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't very strongly believe in it. But you should get with other people and be part of a community. Community has a way of harnessing everyone's strengths and covering over each other's weaknesses. So that is the perfect, setup for you to maximize your ability to contribute and be part of something while minimizing, any of the limitations or the isolation that comes with having a disability. But yeah, don't be the brain damage guy. Be you who happens to also have a brain damage that they're working with. But don't let that define you, and don't let that limit you. And that would be my best suggestion. What is the term for people aligned with the AFA but not in it? Pagan and heathen sound like bad words. What did our ancestors call themselves? All right. I'm trying not to be a jerk. Those aligned with the AFA but not in it, why not join the AFA if you're aligned with the AFA? Get on a team. So that is why we call ourselves Asatru. What did our ancestors call them? They didn't at all, because it didn't make sense. Our ancestors didn't live in a time where there was a religious, cafeteria line where you pick what you want. If you were one of our folk, then you were the religion of your tribe, of your people. If somebody said, met a Germanic tribesman back in the day and say, what religion are you? He'd, scratch his head and say, I'm German. What are you talking about? It wasn't a choice. It wasn't a thing. So the only words that come to us are words of comparison with other people, and not words of self-identification as being loyal to the gods. So our ancestors it wouldn't have made sense. Everyone that they knew, everyone that they met, everyone in their world was Asatru, so they didn't need to have a name for it. When Christianity came about, there's a variety of things. Christians would call us pagans. Roman Christians would call us pagans, as people, the common people off in the provinces doing their backward stuff. The medieval church, as it developed, would call us heathens, people out on the heath doing their backward hillbilly ooga booga religion. It was a derogatory and a defined by them towards the other, not by us for us. Some people argue for the use of the term fornsather. Fornsather means the old way. That's silly, and you would never say you do things the old way unless you are contrasting it with a new way, or the way that everyone else does it. So again, it's like, oh no, we don't do what everybody else does. We do this old-fashioned thing. If we wanted to go watch a VHS tape, we're practicing fornsather. If we want to go ride around in a horse and buggy, we're practicing fornsather. It just means the old way of doing things. So that's why I prefer Asatru, is it is a word that means loyal to the Aesir. and it is a self designation of us about who we are, and it has a positive meaning. It doesn't just mean, oh, we're hillbillies off doing stuff on the heath, or oh, we're simple pagans, or oh, we're doing old fashioned things. It's no, what are we doing? We are showing our troth, our loyalty to the Aesir, and that's why we use that. I think that if you are aligned with the AFA but not in it, and you worship the Aesir, you should call yourself Asatru. But if you call yourself Asatru, I think you should go ahead and make the leap and become part of the Asatru Folk Assembly. But again, you could be asking about somebody else that's not you, and if that's the case, I apologize. Jeffrey in Texas donated $20 towards the Baldershoff steeple and $20 to paying off Freyshoff. Thank you for that, Jeffrey. We appreciate it very much. Is there anything specific you would offer when seeking spiritual healing? So no, unless there was something symbolic of whatever was holding you back spiritually. So, as an offering to Uller that I made at an Uller bloat in, I think, 2009, I made an offering of the like monogrammed. I don't know, when you get your name on something. The Jehovah's Witnesses, like my aunt made a special Bible that had like my name on it. That was a gift to me when I was baptized as a Jehovah's Witness. I offered that as an offering because it was symbolic of me letting go of, the thing that I made an error in, the erroneous spiritual path that I had been on earlier in my life. It was a symbolic of casting that off, or offering that up as some kind of, trophy of something I'd overcome. If you have something in your life that is holding you back spiritually, offering that up as a symbol that you are done with that, or you've overcome that, I think that's a significant thing for spiritual healing. And again, it depends on what the spiritual healing looks like. Healing from being part of a false religion looks different than spiritual healing because you've had an addiction, or because you've lived a lifestyle that wasn't noble. Those things might look real different. But again, I think they're a reasonable thing. And I don't say this trite or silly, but I'm saying, like, offering up your crack pipe or your whatever your deal is. If the thing is you are ritually destroying that thing as a symbol that you have overcome that, or you've conquered that, I think that's a meaningful offering, because I think it's the gesture and not the item. But I think in general, if you don't have something specific that's symbolic of the struggle that you're going through, an offering that you think is good for whatever God you are approaching. Like I mentioned earlier, healing generally, and this can be spiritual as well as physical or mental. Air is a good one of the Asatru to reach out to. But it's also good to reach out to any of our gods that you feel a special closeness to, or that you feel compelled to call upon to help. And I think the case there is either, and this just goes with the general offering to that god. You can either go, I say this, you can go whatever way you want. But to my mind, there's two kind of thought processes. What do you think this god prefers? Or what do you like that you want to share with them? So, for example, at the Freyshoff dedication, there's a boy there, and I don't know how old he is, 10, maybe. Anyway, it's not germane to the story. There's a little boy there, and he wanted to. He went and he made some hot chocolate for Freyr that he wanted to offer. And the point of that wasn't that, this is made from chocolate and the cocoa bean is sacred to Freyr. No, it was, I really like hot chocolate. Hot chocolate is delicious. I think Freyr would like hot chocolate too because it's good. And it's a very simple offering, but I think that's a perfectly reasonable way to go about it. Like, hey, do you really like whatever your favorite beer is? Maybe that's what you offer because that's something that's special to you. Or you go the route of, oh, what do I think is special to this god, or what conforms to an element of lore that we have about this god, or UPG folks have about them. So there's a number of right ways to do that. But I think that any kind of offering to the gods to ask for that healing is appropriate, be it incense, be it, an offering of food or an offering of drink or anything else, unless you have a specific token of the thing that you're trying to overcome or something related to your particular struggle that's symbolic to you. Does the AFA offer a deep baptism ceremony? So I was talking to somebody about that just the other day, like within the last week. No, but some people want that. And when I say no, yes, any of our Gothar could help come up with a ceremony for you to help cast that off and sever that in a way that you feel is appropriate. Absolutely, we'd be happy to do that. As far as a regular rite, no, and the reason is you're not converting to Asatru. It's not a conversion process, it is a reversion. You are resetting to the factory settings. Asatru is the natural state that you were born. It is the natural state of your blood, bone, and soul. So returning to your natural condition isn't a conversion process. It is a coming home. And that's why in the AFA we talk about coming home to Asatru, because it is a spiritual homecoming. But yeah, any of our Gothar would be happy to help you ceremonialize a severing of ties with a baptism that you've had. We'd be happy to work through that with you in a way that's meaningful to you. Me and my best friend of 6 years got into a fight over a girl, and I fear we'll never be friends again. We used to talk every day, but he hasn't spoken to me in months. Who should I pray to? So, and this is a theme that I feel like we're coming back to a lot lately on the show tonight, is like which God it's appropriate to pray to. And I think that, as I've said a bunch, any of them are appropriate for you to pray to about any of the things. I think we get stuck in modern times to think that that they're highly, highly specialized and that there's no overlap. All of our gods are gods. They have divine might in whatever realm they want to do. There's certainly things that they're more commonly associated with, but it is completely appropriate to pray to any of our gods and any of our goddesses about anything that you would like. That's respectful. But on this particularly, if I were you, again, there's a lot of choices, probably just fine. I would pray to Freya. I would pray to Freya. I don't know which one of you got the girl, which one of you lost the girl, if you both lost the girl, what that is. But it revolves around the passion and the lust involved in relationships, romantic relationships, and the damage that cause your friendship. I would pray to Freya for her help in her healing in that. And that's where I would look towards that. I think there's a lot of people that wouldn't be their go-to, or a lot of people would go different ways. And as I said, I think that as long as you have a good reason, or a thought process that's reverent behind it, any of our gods and goddesses are a good choice for that. But I would specifically pray to Freya on that. I think that our goddesses are particularly well equipped to mend relationships between men. And I think that in life, women are very well equipped to help soothe relationships between men just as easily as they can tear those apart just as quickly. But they're also very well suited towards bringing people together and sewing that social fabric back, of weaving that frith. And I think that the Vanadis, Freya, would be who I would pray to for it. I know pagans are polytheists that worship many gods, but do you believe in one main god? No, I'm polytheist and I believe in many gods. So there are people within Asatru that, it depends if your question is a question about like cosmology or personal preference. Um, no, our doctrine is that we have many gods, that Odin is the king of the gods, that he is the All Father, and yeah, that he is the All Father. But and the reason that he is called the All Father, the Gylfaginning says, is because he's the father of all the gods, and um, they serve him in the way that children would serve a father. So Odin has a paternal nature to the other divinities, the other Aesir and Asimir. Um, but there's a thing that some people have called a full trui, or a god that they put kind of all their eggs in one basket, or there's a god they have a particularly tight relationship with or bond with. And for different people, that can be any one of our gods that they have built that particular relationship with. But no, as a whole, doctrinally, we're polytheists, we're hard polytheists, and we worship all of our gods. It's not like they emanate from just one. It's not like they're all really one gods and different versions of that. And I know a lot of people are used to that, or as a concept, monotheism is something they're more used to, so they try to force polytheism to fit that mold, but it's really not that way. Okay. Did you put the runes on your horn, or did you get it from somewhere? My friend Gothi Rob Stam um, carved this for me, and he did a really cool job. Um, yeah, it says Allsherjargoði around the rim, and he carved it for me a number of years ago. If Asatru worship the Aesir, who worships the Vanir? Njord and Freyr did not seem to be bad. So that's a common misunderstanding. So no, Njordur and Freyr are not bad at all, but The When the first war happened between the Aesir and the Vanir, when the Aesir won, the Vanir that we have named, all of them became absorbed into the tribe of the Aesir. So all of the Vanir are Aesir now, and they have been since the dawn of humanity. That war took place before the dawn of the folk. The Aesir, all of the Vanir are referred to as Aesir. When the list of the Aesir, again, in the poem that I refer to a lot, the Gylfaginning, is there. Um, they're listed intermingled with the Aesir. When asked who are the Aesir, the list of 12 includes, two the ones you mentioned, Njordur and Freyr, and the Asinjur, the female Aesir, Frigg or Freya is listed as, along with Frigg, the most well born, I think it says. So the Vanir are incorporated into the Aesir, and they are now Aesir as well. It's not wrong to refer to them as Vanir. That's their roots, but they are also legitimately Aesir now, and that's part of being Asatru recognizes that. Can you explain how the Asatru concept of gods and worship is different from the Christians? Do you consider the gods to be perfect, and how do you define gods, and how do you define worship? Okay, just a sec. All right, so last part first, I guess. Well, I guess the whole last sentence first. Do you consider the gods to be perfect? No, because perfection as a concept is it's askew to our understanding of existence. Our gods participate in eternal cosmic struggle, and so they're not, all present or all knowing or all any of the all things, any of the omni things. But that said, they are vastly powerful. They are vastly mobile. They are vastly wise. They are, of unfathomable godly ability in all those areas. But as our understanding of existence works, I touched on this earlier in the broadcast with the idea of the sun and rod with its moving, the indication of movement. Our gods are always trying to grow and become more. They're trying to gain in might. They're trying to battle back the forces of chaos. Odin is trying to search for wisdom, to learn more, to know more, to master more magic and more power. So, no, our gods are vastly, vastly greater than we can comprehend, but no, they're not perfect, but they're much more perfect than we can comprehend or we can grasp. So in some way it might be a distinction without a difference, but not so much. How do you define gods? I don't think we try to. I think we understand that they're divine beings, and we understand that different groups of people worship different things, and that our people worship the Aesir. We don't try to define gods. We do try to recognize the Aesir, who are our gods, and we worship them. And those are outlined for us in our lore and attested to by our ancestors, to where we can know them in a way, or we can have a glimpse or an image of how to understand them and how to comprehend them. But those are laid out for us in our lore and have been with us since the beginning of our folk. As far as how do you define worship, that is easier because it is a literal definition, is what worship means. It's assigning worth to or recognizing worth in. Worship is more than that. Hey, baby, good night. Sleep good. We'll see you in the morning.
The rest of the cookies is for Santa.
Okay. All right.
But the rest of the cookies is for you, we give some cookies to Santa.
Okay. Thank you, baby. I will come in and say goodnight in a minute. So, so worship is certainly recognizing them as being worthy of worship, which is redundant phonetically, but recognizing that they are our gods and we are their people. And then ritualizing that recognition by making offerings to them and by expressing our loyalty or our troth to them, which is what Asatru means, troth to the Aesir. So, can you explain how the Asatru concept of gods and worship is different from Christianity? I mean, I could go on forever and do that on all of the little differences because there's tons. But as far as like some of the big differences or something that I think is kind of a defining difference. And I'm trying to do this fairly and not insultingly. Jehovah is described as a jealous God, and frequently he is very demanding of he's demanding of a lot of stuff. And it's taught that mankind is bad and has original sin from their birth, and they're all bad, but they're offered redemption through Jehovah's Son, Jesus. And they're told that the only way to the Father is through Jesus, and that you are saved by faith alone, not by works, that none should boast. The idea of individual personal glory or personal accomplishment, personal success is frowned upon in Christian worship because everything is about the glory of Jehovah and how great he is. And everything is about submission to Jesus to redeem you from your horrible sins because you are horrible. And it's talked about even those that make it to heaven, what they do when they get there is they get crowns, and then they take their crowns and they lay their crowns at the feet of their God. So it is very much a diminishment of self, only to like the only thing that is good is God. The only thing that is good, none are good, only God is good. That's very antithetical to Asatru. We believe that our gods want us to be awesome. Our gods they're the gods of heroes. They celebrate success and heroism and greatness. And one of the ways that we worship our gods. Okay, so let me finish this thought and then I want to go to a way that we differ. So our gods like us to be successful and we want our gods to be proud of us, and we want to gain their attention by living nobly and doing good deeds. it is literally not about faith. It is about works and accomplishment in deeds. And Asatru, we are our deeds, and we want to build a reputation to where our gods are proud of us. So that is a fundamental difference. The other thing is the idea of the gift cycle. The idea of worship in Asatru is very closely tied with the idea of continuously exchanging gifts. And I think we see it personified in the late Dark Ages, early medieval period, with the idea of reciprocal gifts between lord and retainer. Like the idea is, a king doesn't give the same gifts to a knight that a knight owes a king. There's a complete difference in power and in scope and in resources. In the same way, our gods and us are perpetually in a gift-giving cycle. The gifts they give us are much better and more important than the gifts we give them. They don't need mead. They don't need, offerings of food. But the energy and the devotion that's put into the offering is what they get out of it. But they give us tremendous blessings. And they've started and initiated that gift cycle with all of the blessings of life, of the breath of life, of our inherent inheritance of who we are, of our very, existence as living beings. They gave us. So they start that gift cycle. But we're in a perpetual cycle of exchanging gifts. And that's very different than the way that Christians approach worship and communion with their God. What is the Asatru view on sin, forgiveness, and redemption? It's a very good question. That's a very good question. So, sin is not a Hebrew word. It is a Germanic word, and it goes back to Proto-Indo-European in terms of like fault in a judgment, like a legal. You are the party who is the wrong one in a legal sense. So the idea of sin is acting in a way that is ignoble. There's standards of nobility and acceptable social behavior, and behaving in a way that is shameful and dishonorable is sinful. A lot of the time that is exhibited by betrayal of oaths and bonds of loyalty or acting against kin. But what I think are more instructive are the ideas of forgiveness and redemption. So in Christianity, for example, or Judaism or whatever, if you do bad things, it's not, the victim isn't the one you owe stuff to. Their God is the one you owe stuff to. So when you sin in your treatment of another person, the one you make it right with is God. And the other people and you yourself are like, it's incumbent upon you, you're commanded to forgive people who transgress against you. It's not the case in Asatru. In Asatru, if you do something sacrilegious, then yes, you may need to make that right with the God that you have offended sacrilegiously. But if you do something dishonorably in an oath or in a relationship, in a marriage, towards a brother, towards a boss, towards a coworker, towards another person, your job to get that right or to be redeemed is to do the best that you can to repay what's been taken. We talk in modern times about a debt to society, but those are just words. Like society doesn't get something by you going to jail. So the paying your debt to the person you wronged, our concept of justice is very much that if you take from somebody else, you need to rebalance the scales. If I, there's some kind, and sometimes it's not in the exact same way. Like sometimes it's in an equivalency. If I damage your reputation by lying about you or spreading some kind of false rumor about you, there is a real cost. I have hurt your reputation. So, one idea on how to fix that is to go before the same people that heard me, unfairly malign your character, and me go before those people and admit that I lied or I was wrong, that you are an honorable, good person, that the things I accused you of were false and not true. That's the first step. If I broke something of yours, can I replace it? If it's irreplaceable, can I substitute an equivalent value of something else? But it's to repay you what I have taken from you by the thing I did. If I did something horrible to you and I really hurt your feelings, that is a value. I caused you a damage. What can I do to repair the damage that I caused? That concept is in the first step to our understanding of forgiveness and redemption. I guess it is redemption in the sense that I have fixed the thing that I broke, but then there's the additional step of forgiveness. In Asatru, none of us are obliged to forgive anyone ever for any reason. But don't mishear me. That doesn't mean we shouldn't forgive people. It certainly doesn't mean we can't forgive people. What it does mean is that we use the term Aryan, not because it's edgy, but because it means noble. Personal nobility is a big deal in Asatru. As noble men and women, it is up to me whether I choose to forgive you or not. I can choose to extend you that courtesy of forgiveness, or I cannot. Just because you rebalance the scales, I don't have to forgive you at all. You wouldn't need to rebalance stuff if you didn't break into my house, if you didn't steal my stuff, if you didn't, kill my dog. I don't owe you forgiveness for anything. If you repay it, then cool. Maybe I don't have a legal case against you, or maybe you fix the thing you broke, but I don't have to like you. I don't have to forgive you. I don't have to do that. That's not incumbent upon me. But if you've made those efforts and that's the thing, an apology without an attempt to fix the thing you broke means very little. If you fixed the things you broke, or you made a good faith effort to, and on top of that you apologize, then certainly I can choose to forgive you. And I think that it's noble for us to choose to forgive often. But it's not out of obligation. It's out of our nobility of character that we grant you a favor of giving you forgiveness if you've done wrong. And that's a big difference. On redemption, you don't erase bad deeds. You can try to restore the balance. And the best shot at redemption is by overwhelming the bad with the good. If you have a bad reputation and are of low character, it's not as though you can pray to your God and then all of that disappears. It doesn't. That occurred, that exists, that's in the history books. But you can redeem yourself in many cases by outperforming that, by overwhelming it with the good deeds that you've done, with the accomplishments that you've made. It doesn't take away the bad, but it waters it down and it overpowers it and overwhelms it with the good. And the measure of those things, when judged by your gods and your ancestors, is your path towards redemption in that sense. I hope that gets to what you were asking. Are there any books that you recommend to learn more? Yes, there's lots of books I recommend to learn more. The Culture of the Teutons is one that I always recommend. It talks about the justice part that I just talked about very specifically. We are going to release it very soon in a little booklet, pamphlet format. But if you go to our website, and Nick will throw a link up here in a second, but the Asatru Trulagmal is the fundamentals of Asatru belief as practiced by the Asatru Folk Assembly. So if you go there, and it's in our library if you're not in a spot to go there right now, but the Asatru Trulagmal is the most fundamental, and it's written in a way that with the purpose of, and I wrote the vast majority of it. So what I was trying to do was have a document to where if you had never heard of this before and you read that, you would learn what this is, what the fundamentals of our practice are, and what, the core, those things are what it means to practice Asatru in the Asatru Folk Assembly. So I think that's a really good thing for everybody to read. I think it, I think that's really important, and it just gives you a good primer on it. But also, if you've got that, and if you would like to read the lore, the prose and poetic eddas are always a really good thing to read. They're, the main meat and potatoes of the lore. But yeah, those are the things I always recommend off the top of my head, because I think they get to the meat of what we're doing really well. Did any Iseer ever instruct people in how to behave similar to the 10 Commandments? No, not in a commandments format, but in an advice format, absolutely. The Havamal, or the sayings of Har, or the sayings of the High One, which is Odin. The Havamal has a lot of advice it's advice that you can reverse engineer for women. It's to people generally, but it's a lot of advice towards young men who are venturing from home, who are on the road, who are at different points in their life. It's a very, very accessible piece of our lore. And it's one that, people really like because it presents itself in that format to where it has stanzas with advice on a lot of different situations. And it's very applicable to modern situations as well as ancient ones. So absolutely, the Havamal. That's in the prose edda, but it's also it's very easy to find online. Veluspau.org has a really good Bellows translation of it that you can reference whenever you want. So I'd suggest going there. Yeah. So that's where we're at tonight. I think that takes us through the questions that we've got. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate everybody being here and sharing the evening with me. It is, again, the fifth night of Yule. So we've got 7 more days to come. I wish you guys the very best of Yules for the remainder of the days. I will not see you guys next week on 12th night. That will be the 5th Wednesday of the month. So that's Brandy's show, and she's going to have a fun 12th night New Year's show for you guys. So look forward to that. And I will see you again in 2026. So we are closing out the 31st year of the Asatru Folk Assembly. We'll be starting the 32nd year of the Asatru Folk Assembly as January starts. And it is going to be amazing. I'm very excited to share that with each and every one of you. If you are out here and you hear this show and you agree with what we're saying, if you are a heterosexual white person that would like to come home to your gods, then you should join the Asatru Folk Assembly. We'd love to have you. We're going to do great things together in 2026, and you should be there for it. So, best time to join was 30 years ago. The second best time is right now. But until 2026, hail the Iseer, hail the folk, hail the AFA, and remember, victory never sleeps.